Hello? Oh, there it is. All right, cool. Can you hear me now on that? That seems to have fixed the problem, I think. Okay. Can
Yeah,
somebody.
it's working now, I think.
Okay. Did you guys want me to start this over again, or you want me to keep going? It's up to you.
Well, we still have the other stream from that you did for the other class.
No, you don't,
Um,
actually.
yeah.
No, I mean,
Oh,
not in this case. Believe it or not,
well,
these audio
okay. Well, I
problems.
just
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
um,
interrupt, but I just mean to say that the audio problems in the previous class prevented me from doing a demo. So this is the demo right
yeah,
now. So if you,
yeah. Oh, I just meant like some of this stuff is review from
yes,
the yeah. So
yeah,
so
yeah.
you don't have to go over all of it again,
Okay,
right?
all right,
Yeah, I
cool.
think we'd be fine with that.
Okay, so I should continue. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that'd
okay.
be
I
fine.
just want to make sure. All right, cool. Well, as long as the audio is being recorded, I know. I wish I could edit the Twitch videos, but they don't really make that an option. You can make highlights, but not really editing. It's weird. But anyway, let's try to make this composite this basically, and I want to try to show you guys that this can be very easy. This is a kind of a weird resolution here. Obviously, if we were going for print size, we'd want to go into our render settings. We'd want to go to common. Down here, change the preset. So if we wanted print size, we could go to letter, right? And it depends on, do we want this portrait? Right now it's portrait because it's 3300 by 2550. If we wanted it to be reversed, like landscape, we could go 3300 width by 2550 height, like that. And now we have landscape. Now how do I see that? Here, I want to turn on my resolution gate. See? And with the resolution gate turned on, I can re-render this, and this is actually at print size right now that I'm rendering. And because I'm not rendering in Arnold, it actually should be a little bit faster, ideally. I say ideally because, toon shading is meant to be faster, but anytime you're rendering anything at print size, it takes a little while because it's 3300 by 2550 or 2550 by 3300. And so for that reason, I've made your final and your midterm do the last week of class print size in PDF format with your name on it. There's a reason for that. I pushed it back. Your midterm too, by the way, to the last week because I know this takes a while to render, and I'm trying to give you guys as much time as possible. I'm trying to give you a break, basically. So what's due on your blog can be just simply HD, like 1280 renders. That's fine. I just want to see a PDF in the drop folder by the end of the class. Print size PDF with your name on it, ambient occlusion. Oh, okay, let's look at some examples. Might be a better way to show you what I mean. So really quick, previous classes, right? Just so you can see what I'm talking about here. Let's pick any one of them. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Pick this guy. I like this guy's work. He got an A. So, like, what's expected of you? And by the way, the first term that I taught the class, I know this doesn't make you feel any better, probably, but I actually had a requirement of a physical 3D print to be made with a 3D printer. That got thrown out as a requirement, so it seems like it gets easier with every term, actually. But this is the idea. We have the reference here at the top, reference at the top. Then this is the render, and a student again got very, very close. So the 3D render looks as close as possible to the original reference, And you can even hand paint your textures. So he chose to actually hand paint or Photoshop paint. Not on top of the render, so please don't get it confused, but he hand painted the texture for the cloth here, right? As opposed to sampling it, that's fine too. Flex your Photoshop skills, flex your digital painting skills. I think that's great. Go for it. So whatever you need to do, just try to match to the best of your abilities the original. So this is the render. And again, this isn't just this isn't photoshopped on top. He didn't Photoshop paint on top of it. He actually hand painted his Photoshop textures. How do I know? Because here's your stylized render and here's your ambient occlusion. So this is due for your midterm and for your final projects in PDF format in the Dropbox. I'm trying to give you a break by not having the midterm print size render due at midpoint, but rather the last week of class. So I've pushed that requirement back. This is what we're going to be covering right now. How do we achieve this kind of thing? So that's what today's lesson is about, this effect here that we're looking at on the screen. So let's go ahead and do that. Now in Maya, right? Is this still, wow. Well, it's print size, so it's still going. This is kind of what I meant about, let's hit escape. Okay. And let's not do print size for time purposes. I'll go back into my settings. I'll change the image size preset from print size to HD 1080, something a little bit more reasonable. It's like a high definition TV screen here. All right, this won't take as long to render, obviously. It's only HD. So for the purposes of your blog, you can give me even a 720 render. I'll be okay with that up until the last week. So some of you guys went above and beyond, and thank you, by the way. So if you were one of the students that gave me a print size render for your midterm, that's awesome. And basically, that's enough. So if you don't want to have to re-render your midterm at print size because you've already turned it in, you've already put it in the drop folder, I'm fine with that. You've done it. You've succeeded. You've fulfilled the requirement for that. But for those of you guys that don't have a print size render for your midterm, that is a requirement. So just make sure you have it in the drop folder by the end of the class. And of course, make sure also that it is, oh, there we go. I feel like that outline's a little thick. What do you guys think? Little too much thickness on the outline? Yes, no?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? I don't know. Feels like, as long as it's still a paint effects thing, I can always just pull down on the line width. It's not hard to fix. I feel like this is a little bit too thick for me, but one more render, and then we'll move on to the actual compositing. But again, this is meant to be easy. I'm really trying to make this as easy and as enjoyable as I can. So once this is finished rendering, we can take this image. Even if you don't have Photoshop installed, we can use photopea.com. That's Photopea, like Princess and the Pea, or the food, PEA, right? So Photoshop PEA, we can do that. That's one way we could do this. So if I save this as tree, save it as tree, right? And then I go to photopea.com. And whether or not you want to use Photopea, or maybe you want to use your copy of Photoshop, which should be free to you, that's fine. You know, it's totally up to you. So at this point, then, what should we put the tree on? Does anybody care? A wall, canvas, paper? Anybody? Nobody cares. All right. Well, you can choose. You can decide for yourself. So the point of this assignment is try to fool me, or anybody really, into thinking that this is a traditional thing, right? So how do we do that? How can we fool people into thinking it's a traditional thing? Well, first of all, find something that's high res. Like this one's 1600 by 1232. I feel like that's pretty high res. So I'll use this guy. You know, this is my background paper. I'll right-click Copy Image. Now over in photopea.com, I don't even have the software. Well, I do have the software if I want to launch Photoshop, but I'm just making the point that you can do this online. You don't even need to have the software installed. So photopea.com, I paste in my paper. That looks pretty cool. I open the tree.png. There it is. I can say Control A, that's Control A to select all, Control C for copy, and then Control V for paste, right? I have this tree on top here, but I really want this to look like I drew this on this paper at this point. So the next thing I do is I use a multiply blending mode. I change my blending mode to multiply. See, and already it looks like maybe I might have made this myself on this piece of paper. Maybe, I don't know. So from here, like any kind of Photoshop tricks that you might already know, this is where I want you to try to apply them. But I'm going to teach you what I know at this point, right? So in multiply mode, if I wanted to make this darker, all I would need to do is duplicate it. And every time I duplicate it, it gets darker and darker and darker. So multiply is going to keep the dark pixels and throw away everything else, throw away the light pixels, right? I also like to duplicate stuff for insurance purposes, I like to say, but it's always good to have an extra copy that hasn't been futzed with or messed around with, you know. Now from here, what can we do to improve this or make this even more interesting? Well, one thing we could do is we could try to use the background paper in a way that it looks like it's been rubbed out or just very old. So watch how I do this. Watch how this works. So I take the original background, I duplicate it, that's Control J. I then desaturate it by using Control Shift U. That makes it black and white. Is everybody with me so far? I hope. I'm going to keep going. So now I want to use this as a layer mask. So watch how this works. Control A again to select all. Control C for copy. I'll go into the render. This is the render layer. I'll make a layer mask. If I hold down Alt and click on the layer mask, I can paste in that black and white image. So again, what I'm doing here is I'm going to this black and white image, which is just the paper. I'm copying it, and then by Alt clicking, I'm pasting it in here. So I really want to paste it specifically, again, Alt click in here. Paste it in. See? Now, when I paste it in, by the way, I can also crunch my levels or increase the contrast. So watch how I do this. Control L for levels and really just crunch the contrast together. Really make this super high contrast. And there's a reason for this. Watch, I'll show you. So now I go back here and click off the layer mask and back to my original render, and you can immediately see the result. Now, one thing I like to do at this point is I like to invert the layer mask because this looks pretty good to me. But for funsies, I will take the layer mask, I'll select it, and I'll hit Control I for invert. Which one do I like better? Well, which part of the tree do I want worn away? I don't want the main part of the tree worn away, so then I guess logically I'll leave it this way because I think I like the roots worn away a little bit better. You can always adjust the levels again by hitting Control L and crunching your levels, see, to further adjust this. It's up to you. You know? That's your call. And like I said, you can continue to use like your Photoshop skills to try to continue to push this and make it a little bit more interesting. So what's something else that I could do? Well, I could maybe like use a little dodge and burn. That would be another option. Or if I wanted the paper to go away a little bit, I could also decide, well, maybe I want the paper to go away a little bit in a certain place. I think it looks better personally to have the canvas very much visible everywhere throughout the whole thing. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that I wanted it to be a little bit less visible around the tree. So again, I could make a layer mask, you know, and with the layer mask, use a gradient. So what kind of gradient am I looking for? Like a radial gradient, for example, in the layer mask. What am I doing? Well, I'll click Alt click, and this gradient, go back to where is my gradient? I lost it. Sorry. There we go. Gradient. G for gradient, right? So then change this to be black to transparent or black to white. Radial gradient. Let's see what happens. The sort of spotlight effect in here. You know. Now if we go back here, you see what happened? By making a black and white gradient mask, layer mask, sorry, with a radial gradient, then now you can see that paper is much more faded here in the center. So that's a way that you can kind of fade back the paper effect. Just have a white layer behind it. Right? And if you invert this, you can kind of see the opposite. the layer mask. So I kind of like this. I don't think that's too bad. I do feel like maybe the layer mask was a little aggressive here, so I'll undo. And then when I make this layer mask again, I'm going to lower the opacity to be, I don't know, significantly less, 40%, 30%, just so it's not quite so aggressive. And that way when I make the layer mask, it's not going to get as much of the paper. It's not going to destroy as much of the paper when I do it. So the lower your opacity when you make the layer mask, hopefully it won't do quite as much. Usually I do this with numbers, so I'll hit something like 2 for 20% or something for this. This is changing my actual layer opacity. Or I could just simply make it gray. Let's try that. Just make it gray. And then, again, a layer mask with tones of gray. Yeah, see, that's better. Not as aggressive. See? And now we're getting not as much of the paper being removed. But now, maybe it's starting to look arguably like I actually did draw this on this piece of paper. Of course, you can argue with me, but that's the goal here, right? So how can I further push this? If I wanted to add some vignetting, I could make a new layer. Control-Alt-Shift-E. That one doesn't work. Control-Alt-Shift-E. Whoa, really? Do I have a shortcut that's not going to... I guess that shortcut's disabled. That's unfortunate. But, oh, no, it worked. It did work. Oh, it just took a while to update because I'm doing it through a browser. So what did that do? Control-Alt-Shift-E. It took all the layers underneath it and stamped it into a new layer. I don't know if you know about this shortcut. It's one of my favorite shortcuts. It's called Stamp Visible into New Layer. So what I've done here is I've just taken all of this old work that I've already done, which I can, by the way, group together by hitting Control-G, just like Maya. Oh my God, it's the same shortcut, Control-G for group. And then so I can take the old work, I can group it together, hide it, and I'm left with all the work that I've currently done. And then from here, this is just like all this work stamped into a new layer. I can hit O for dodge and burn. O is your shortcut for dodge and burn. Make a nice large brush. And I'm personally sometimes confused which one it is. Is it dodge or is it burn? Okay, this is clearly dodge. Because if it's making stuff lighter, then it's dodge. If it's making stuff darker, then it's burn. How do we know? Go over here. The magnifying glass is dodge. And the hand is burn. Right? And so if I go to burn, make my brush nice and soft by holding down Shift brackets. So Shift brackets makes my brush soft. Brackets makes my brush hard. Sorry, Shift brackets, one way, hard brush. Shift brackets, the other way, soft. I don't know if you can see, but look here. Look at this icon. You can actually see it updating. So Shift left bracket makes a soft brush. Shift right bracket makes a hard brush. So I want to keep my brush kind of soft. And then gently burn in the corners. Do a little vignetting. And there we go. Now we're getting the result that I want. And I mean, I want you guys to have fun with this. I know you're rolling your eyes when I say that. I can see you rolling your eyes from from my screen. But yeah, try to have some fun with this. So copy your original guy here. Like there's my original. And again, multiply it on top, lower the opacity, and just tweak this until you get the results that you like. You know? Like, do I want to multiply my original drawing on top a little bit? And how much? Use basically all of your compositing wizardry to get something, like, again, try to fool your audience into thinking that this is made with traditional medium. And that's the goal. So I want to ask if there are any questions at this point. So, the canvas, yes. The audio is worse. Never mind, I fixed it. All right. I think, well, the audio should be recording now, but I'm just going to have to tell people that. No questions. Okay, I'm just going to have to tell people that you have to skip ahead for the audio. So, yeah. All right. So use whatever Photoshop or compositing tricks are in your bag of tricks at your disposal, and try to, again, make something that looks like it's made by hand or traditional medium. That's the goal. And do it with your characters, but do it with the idea that you're going to apply this to both your midterm and your final. Meaning that you need to make a stylized render for both your midterm and your final. It's up to you as to what style you want to adopt for that final turn-in, for the final week of class. I'm going to leave that up to you. But for the next assignment, for Tuesday, please try to make something that looks like traditional medium. Try to make something that looks like maybe it was actually hand-drawn. And you're welcome to mess around however you want with this, like whatever tricks that you wanna use to make it look like it's hand drawn. It's just totally up to you. Yeah. So one thing I would prefer that you not do is, although you can basically Photoshop anything you want, something like this, please don't just add like the Van Gogh filter. So there, I think it might even, is it still available? It's been so long. I don't know if it's still available. It might be. Let's see. Back in the day, it was a thing that you could do. You could make a Van Gogh. Well, see, there's your oil. I think they call it oil paint these days. So using something like the oil paint filter isn't yeah, this was the same thing. This is not necessarily going to fool anybody, but I say necessarily, but I mean really do your best. Like, so much of this is just trying to use algorithms to fool people into thinking something else. So if you feel like you really are really amazing with these Photoshop filters and you can make this oil painting filter really work for you, then try it out. I mean, by all means. Play with your tools, have fun with them, experiment with them. But I don't want you to just like slap a Photoshop filter over it and call it a day, or a Snapchat filter over it, or whatever, and call it a day. This isn't really about the filters at all. What this is about is trying to convince, I kind of like that actually. It's got a nice little added level of texture, if you will. But what this is, again, about mostly is about trying to fool the audience into thinking that this is not 3D or not CGI. That's really the point of this particular assignment. And use whatever tools are at your disposal to do that. But this is starting to look pretty nice. So, does anyone, UVs. Let's talk about UVs really quick, because I think some of you guys maybe are stressing unnecessarily about like your UVs. So here's the thing. For your final assignment, especially, you don't have to worry about following every rule when you're making your UVs. So if you were following every rule like you should be in a perfect world, then this tree should be unwrapped. Now, this is a particularly difficult thing to unwrap, so it would take a while. You could maybe go to auto unwrapping, like you could go to UV auto unwrapping and hope for the best, and maybe it would work for you, and great, that's one option. But the problem with automatic unwrapping, of course, is that you end up with a lot of UV shells. And again, for this final assignment, I'm really trying to make this easy on you. So I recommend whatever view that you're rendering from. Right now I'm rendering from my perspective view, which hopefully you know at this point you should be rendering from your render camera, ideally, in a perfect world. But say I'm rendering from my perspective, it might be easier for you to simply generate your UVs. Actually, 99% of the time for this assignment, it'll be easier for you to generate your UVs based on the camera. So that's easy enough. First, check your UVs. If you already have UVs, then, maybe that's a thing. So check first. See, this tree already has UVs. So really, they're already done for me. If you use a base mesh, or maybe if you've downloaded a mesh from online, it might already have UVs, in which case your job's already done. Easy, no problem. But let's pretend that I don't have my UVs fixed and that these aren't here. And what do? Because this is kind of a nightmare object. It's got a lot of twists and turns, and it's a difficult thing. it's not for this assignment. It should be really easy because look, all you have to do is make your UVs based on your camera. So if we go to generate UVs from the camera, camera based, click that. Hey, look, now my UVs are exactly the same as my perspective. I can take this into Photoshop and then I can stretch my texture around this. And you can even use the texture from your original painting. If it's high enough resolution, that's fine. I'm trying to make your life super easy. So I'm telling you, you can base your UVs from your render camera, and that's going to save you so much time. Really, it really is. It's going to save you a huge amount of time because if you try to make your UVs the correct way, then you'll be spending a lot more time making UVs. And unless you're going to export the geometry to sell, like maybe it's something that you actually want to reuse in the future or put in a video game or make an animation out of, then you should really follow all the rules I've given you. For this assignment, for your final, you're matching a painting or you're matching a shot from a movie. Camera is not moving. If the camera doesn't move, guess what? You can make your UVs from whatever camera view you have, which clearly I just did. So these are my UVs. I can now take this as a snapshot under Image, UV Snapshot, take this into Photoshop, and then create my texture based on these UVs, just like so, from this viewport. Does that make sense? I hope. How are you guys feeling about this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, what else would you like me to cover while this is recording and the stream is going? We've talked about tune shading. We've talked about compositing. We've talked about UVs. Where would you like me to go next? I'll check the chat since.
I have a question. You
Yeah.
said that we had to do the stylized render for our midterm and our final. Is that true, or is it just for our final?
It's both. It's due on the last week, and basically, you can make whatever stylized render you would like. I've pushed back the requirement so that it's obviously we're past midpoint. So here, let me again show you the examples from previous classes. So let's look at Carly here. She did a great job, A student again, right? So then only for her, she had to actually make a 3D print. So boy, she definitely struggled with the physical 3D print, but I mean, really amazing final. So let's like really quickly look at what I consider an amazing final here. All right, so this is due again for both your midterm and for your final, both. But I've pushed back the requirement to be the last week of class because print size renders.
Back when we were
taking,
doing our 3D like midterms, you told us we didn't have to do a stylized render. Like that was something you specifically said.
Guys,
you told us that we didn't have to worry about it, and you threw it out.
Really, seriously, it's in your syllabus, and not only is it in your syllabus, but
Okay,
you can apply
but
the
then you told
stylized
us-
render. You can apply the stylized render, the same one that even the same shaders, as far as I'm concerned, from your final to your midterm. So it's like drag and drop render, basically.
Okay. It's gonna take a while to render, and you specifically told us not to worry about
Software
it.
I pushed back the due dates for your print size renders. Like I said, I'll say it again. For your midterm renders, I said you don't have to have any print size stuff due until the last week of class. I said that multiple times, right? So I'm saying it again. Your print size renders are due on the last week of class for your midterm and your final. And if you've already rendered out your ambient occlusion at print size and it's already in the drop folder, then it's done. Like that part's done already, right? So it's finished. So then if you've got your ambient occlusion like this done for your midpoint, right? And you've done that print size,
So does the
got your name on it?
stylized have to be print sized?
It's all both the midterm and the final. This is it, right? If you want to make a comparison, great, kudos to you, extra credit. I'm not requiring this like kind of comparison composite, but look, this has always been the requirement for both the midterm and the final all along. It's always been the same. Print size render, PDF format with your name on it. 3 things. You should have what? You should have the render that is a match of your reference. So do your best to match your reference. This is her reference at the top. This is her 3D render. I'd say that's a pretty close match. She got an A. right? So that's the real challenge, is matching your final render to your painting or your movie still. That's the real challenge. So that's first and foremost the important part. Match your reference. Make an ambient occlusion render. Okay? Then make a stylized render. And the stylized render I'm really flexible on. Just make something that you think is cool looking. In this case, they made looks like a drawing on top of a notebook paper with some mathematical equations and stuff, you know. So I'm very flexible about the stylized render. Just make something that is enjoyable to look at, that you think it's cool. Like a stylized render means just that. Stylized render, stylized however you want. For the next class, for Tuesday, I'd like you to try to go this direction. I want you to go towards something that looks like it's traditional medium. Try to make your stylized render look like traditional medium. For your final, and of course for the print size midterm as well, then you can go whatever direction you want. If you prefer to make something that looks like a blueprint, you can do that. If you want something that looks more fantastical, you can do that. Really, I'm very flexible about the stylized rendering. And I'll put in the announcements exactly what's due for Tuesday, but I'm trying to make this as clear as I possibly can. Here are your requirements. I'm telling you, and I'm going to put it in the announcements both, okay? So, for your midterm and for your final, and again, it's on your syllabus too, I don't know, you have a stylized render, an ambient occlusion, and of course match your reference. Print size, PDF format with your name on it. If you've already done, so for some of you guys, like you've gone here, let's look at folder, right? And if you've already, for example, I don't know, I'll pick anybody in this class, or anyone that's in the 3D Studio class. So here's the print size PDF of, actually I think this is a PNG, but as long as it's print size, I prefer it to be PDF. I need your name on it. But if you have your ambient occlusion, print size, great. Just put your name on it. That's all I ask. PDF format, right? So this is the requirement. Print size, PDF format with your name on it. Ambient occlusion. And obviously match your reference. So this part's done. If it's print size, great. Finished. Looks awesome. I'm very happy with this. Fan-freaking-tastic. Just put your name on it. Make sure it's in PDF format. 3 things. So, ambient occlusion, match your reference, and then your stylized render. So you might be asking, well, what's wrong with this? There's nothing wrong with this, other than it should be in PDF format, it should have your name on it, and we need a stylized render by the last week of class, okay? And I'm sorry if you're bitching and moaning about the class workload, but that's why I pushed specifically the print size renders to be due by the last week of class. I'm trying to do you a favor. I did not require print size renders for the midterm. If you did it, then you're ahead of the game. Like this, Anastasia does not have to re-render this ambient occlusion. She just has to put her name on it. That's it, right? I do need a stylized render, but that can be up to whatever Anastasia wants to do. So if she wants to make a blueprint render, cool. If she wants to make a render on paper or whatever, or canvas, cool. The stylized renders are supposed to be fun and easy. They're not supposed to be torture for you guys. Realism is hard. Realism, I know, is difficult. So that's why we're pulling back. We're doing some stylized rendering stuff. Here it is again, another example. Ambient occlusion, print size with your name on it, PDF format. Here is the render. Here is the reference. Here's the reference. Here's the render. I just need this with your name on it, PDF format, print size. And then lastly, here's the stylized render. And again, I'm very flexible with the stylized render, so you can just try to have as much fun with that as possible. All right, it's about 5 o'clock. We still have plenty of time left, so I need to know from you guys what you would like or what you're struggling with from here. Do you guys want me to cover any modeling UV stuff? What is it that you want me to cover from here? Does anybody have?
I just had a question. So you said that we can have anything for stylized render, right? It doesn't have to be like this assignment. It has
For
to
your
be
final,
within...
it can be anything. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, totally. For your final, it's just about kind of having fun with the stylized rendering. So let me show you some that are kind of fun. So some stuff that's a little bit different, maybe. Let's see.
Oh, sorry, like my connection's been really bad. So,
That's okay.
um, maybe how to make something print sized would be good
Okay,
to know.
sure, no problem. No problem. Oh, here's one. This person did an interesting stylized render. So again, the top, I guess, is the yeah. This is the reference. This is the render. So reference, render, stylized rendering. You can see the student had some fun here. That's what I want you guys to have, some fun with the stylized rendering. That's what I'm saying. Like, whatever you can do to make it fun. Like, use your Paint Effects presets. Use your, I mean, you've got a huge library of Paint Effects stuff to choose from, right? If you go to Generate, if you go to Get Brush, you can use any of these Paint Effects stuff. We have a whole folder just for Toon Paint Effects stuff. Don't forget, if you're going to go this route, that you do need to, don't forget, go to the last option, or actually second to last option in your Toon dropdown, assign Paint Effects brush to the selected stroke. Right? So make sure the stroke is selected when you do this, and then assign Paint Effects brush to Toon lines. So any one of these, just like I said, have some fun with it. But it could be pens or pencils. Try these. You know, have some fun. So like if I wasn't happy with this calligraphy, I could select the make sure the object, you're in object selection mode, so hit F8 or right click, select the stroke, and then select the Paint Effects brush that you want to apply. Then from here, after you have the stroke selected, go to your Toon menu, select Assign Paint Effects Brush to Toon Lines. Whoa! Now I get something that's a little bit too big. Pull back on the line width, because that seems a little bit crazy. And don't forget there's also global scale, so you might want to try playing with both until you have the thickness that you like. And then re-render. Software renderer is probably fine. For the stylized rendering, I would actually suggest that you stick with the software renderer. I think that the Arnold renderer for the stylized rendering might be a little overkill. But I'll leave it up to you. If you can get a good stylized render out of Arnold, I'm okay with that too. Ultimately, Arnold is actually much better for rendering anything, but I just feel like it might be overkill a little bit for the software rendering, or excuse me, for the stylized rendering. So anyway, and boom, there it is, right? So, and like whatever you want to use is cool, you know. It can be anything. So what we were talking about before, we were talking about using markers, you know, or red marker, double click it, got red marker, I have the stroke selected. Under Toon, I say Assign Paint Effects to Toon Lines. I do that, and I re-render. Now, if we're using the software renderer, we shouldn't have to convert the paint effects to polygons, right? So it should just work fine without having to convert. If you do have to convert paint effects to polygons, you always have that option. It should render at that point in both the Maya software renderer and in Mental Ray. See, now I've got this nice like red marker effect, which I think is pretty cool. But, you know, it's whatever you like. For the stylized render, I really do want you guys to have fun. Like, for Tuesday, I'd like you to apply these concepts to the character that you've been working on, right? And I know some of you guys are like, but I don't want to work on the character. I want to work on my final. Yeah. Well, guess what? The shaders that you create, the materials that you create for your character, you can certainly apply those materials and the workflow to your final and midterm, and that's fine too. You know? So this is just a question of workflow. In other words, what do I like here? Do I like the dry erase marker? Maybe that's something I prefer. I double click that. I go to Tune. I say Assign Paint Effects. Re-render. And then I'll get this, I think it was blue marker, dry erase marker instead. Yay. That looks pretty cool. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think that's pretty neat, that effect. So then for print size, the question was, well, how do I change the resolution to print size? Go to your render settings. That's the 1, 2, 3, the fourth slate with the gear. And under image size, we can change the preset to whatever we want. For anything due up until the last week of class, I'm repeating myself a lot here, but I'm really serious about this. Up until the last week, you're welcome to render stuff in HD for your blog. That's fine. Even 720 is fine for critique purposes. But for the last week of class, please, I repeat, have at print size 3 things, right? So you should have your stylized render, you should have your ambient occlusion, and then you should have the best reproduction of your reference that you can create for your midterm and your final, print size, PDF with your name on it in the drop folder. As far as your blog is concerned, yes, I do want your blog updated, but you're welcome to update your blog with an HD. You don't have to have your blog updated with a print size PDF. That's not necessary. I just want to see something on your blog so that with the final critique, I can go to your blog and still critique that, you know? So anyway, print size, where is it? If we scroll down here, we've got letter. So if we click letter, we're going to see print size is 2550 by 3300. You can always swap this if you prefer 3300 width by 2550 height. That's fine too, you know. And don't forget your resolution gate is this icon here. That's the resolution gate. Turn the resolution gate on and off. That shows you exactly what you're going to render. But now if I click render, this will be at print size. So we still have plenty of time, guys. So I would ask again, what else would you like me to talk about? Would you like me to do this again with a character, maybe? Or are you okay with this tree? Are you clear about the material? Or do I need here? I mean, let's see. Hey, Charles. How's it going? I know it's confusing to you guys because you're not here, but there's Charles the roommate and Charles the cat, so it gets confusing sometimes. Anyway, under generate get brush, and no, he did not name his cat after himself. He adopted the cat, already was named Charles. Okay, so like let's do something a little more complex here. Like maybe I'll take one of these guys. We used Richard earlier in the term. Let's use him again. Got Richard here. He's still not sitting on anything, but you know, this time let's make it a little more interesting and have him sitting on something, because I really feel like him floating feels very weird. So let's like at least have something that he's sitting on. Right? Might be a good idea. All right. So, and get a nice angle. Let's do this the right way, shall we? Let's actually make a render camera. I'll go to create camera, make a render camera, call it render camera, render cam. Because we really should be doing this the right way. Don't render from your perspective. I know you're doing it. Stop it. Just stop. Don't do that. It's bad. Do it from your render camera. Oh, by the way, if your preset comes with a camera, and that might happen, if your preset comes with a camera, then try looking through the camera that gets generated, because you never know. You might find that that's better because that has some settings on it. Now with this cube that I have selected here, I can bevel it or smooth it. If I just click the poly smooth button, it's going to turn into a sphere. That's weird. I don't want that. So I'll add additional edge loops, right? And I'll slide the edge loops up. And if I now have these additional edge loops, then when I click the poly smooth button or the 3 button, see what happens. See, now whether it's 3 or poly smooth, it looks nice. Because it may be better to poly smooth in this case. Sometimes it's fine to hit the 3 button, sometimes it's better to hit the poly smooth button. I would say in this case, because we're dealing with toon shaders and we're dealing with the software renderer, let's just go ahead and poly smooth it. You know, just let's not even take the risk. So let's select the object, click poly smooth, like that. And now, and I'm sorry guys that my attempts at humor have been falling so flat. I'm really just trying to keep things light and positive, but I sometimes feel like it's not appreciated, but I'm sorry about that. Trying to like lighten things up may have backfired, but oh well, I'm trying. So anyway, here we go. So let's not render with Arnold. Whoop, escape, escape, stop. All right, well I think Arnold's already been kind of launched here, but let's see. I don't care one way or the other. I want to clear that up. Yeah, the requirements are always the same every term for every class. It's on the syllabus. I just want basically print size renders for your PDF print size renders for your midterm and for your final. 3 things, of course: match your reference, ambient occlusion, stylized render. I'm pushing, again, the print size due date to be the last week of class because I felt, because print size renders take a while to render, obviously, and you know, there's already a lot of pressure on you guys for midterms, so I threw out the print size requirement for that. And we hadn't even gotten to stylized rendering for the midterm, right? So you can even take the same shaders or the same materials that you develop for your character, which is due for Tuesday, or again for the final, which is again due the last week of class, and you can just simply apply those materials and those shaders to your midterm, render that out at print size. I don't even care if the stylized render is the same style. That's fine. If you want to even use the same stylized render that you use for your character on your final and your midterm, that's fine too. I don't care. Requirements are always the same though. Anyway, back to this again. So what can I do to, I mean, if I wanted to make my own stylized render here, under rendering, toon, right? If it was a flat color, it would just be solid color. That's solid white. That's not very interesting. I typically want something that's more like 2-tone or 3-tone. By the way, we can add as many as we want. So if we wanted 3, I could click in the ramp here and make a different shade of gray, right? So then I could take this and make darker gray. And now I have 3 tones, which there we can see here. 3 tones, right? Yes, Charles, it's okay. Can you guys see the viewport is updating, hopefully? But there's my 3 tones. If I want to apply this same material, like I keep saying, once you develop the material,
See the viewport updating.
yeah, the viewport update. So here, change this to software, and oh, let's not. Okay, there's my software render. We want the background color to be white in the camera. Now I want to mention that if this is broken, because I've noticed that I've had some like struggling with this, in that if I change the background color to white, I should see that the background is white now. I should. But if for some reason that doesn't, see, it seems to be broken again for some reason. This is weird. I don't know why. This seems to be broken in the new camera. But don't let that stop you. Don't let that be an obstacle. Just simply make a white plane back there, right? So, oops. Go back to perspective. So go back to your perspective camera. This is my perspective camera. Make a plane, just a solid plane. Hold down Shift, it'll keep it square. So now, right, we could actually do this twice. We do this for the floor, and we could even duplicate this for the wall. If I hold down J, it should angle snap, but in case it doesn't, you can always just type in 90. So rotate 90 degrees. Now I have a wall and a floor. It's not as fancy as a cyclorama or an infinity wall because we have that line, obviously. You can see that. But as long as we have something other than a black background, we don't want that. So go back to my render camera. Maybe I want to scale these out a little bit more so that they're scaled to the point where we don't see any kind of black background. I just don't want to see that black background ever if I can avoid it. So whatever I need to do to get rid of the black background, scale these guys up as much as I need to, scale these guys up as much as I need to. You could even type in a number if you prefer down here. So if you want to type this in 10 or something, whoop, select this guy, type this guy into 10. Whoop, okay, cool. Now, I want the same material. So like I was saying, once you design the shader, once you have the shader made, you can then apply that shader to whatever objects you want. So that's what I'm saying. If you develop these materials for your character, which is due on Tuesday again, then you can take the same shader and just apply it to your midterm and your final. You don't have to do the work over if you don't want to. I mean, it's whatever you think looks cool. Assign the material to the background, assign the material to the floor. Let's even assign the material to the box, right? So now let's see what happens. There we go. That looks nice. Now, not bad. Maybe we need some outlines from here. So next question is, well, what do I do about the outlines? Okay, every object that you select, you can make an outline, go to Tune, Assign Outline. The regular outline is just going to be a perfect line around the object, right? If you want something fancier, you can always choose a different Tune example. And we could then, by using a different Tune example, we could apply that, right? So under Paint Effects, and then whether pencil or pen or whatever it is, like I thought the calligraphy thing looked cool personally. So watch how this works. I again select the object, go to Tune, Assign Outline. First you have to make the outline, but once the outline is made and selected, then you can double click, say calligraphy, we'll say, and then don't forget under Tune, assign Paint Effects to Tune Lines. Now, it's been assigned. Whether or not we see it in the render or not is going to be up to the line width. So you can always crank on the line width or potentially the global scale until you get a nice thick line. And it might be too thick, so, you know, render it, re-render it, adjust the sliders as needed. But now I have a nice outline around the guy. Let's do it for the box here. If you've already created the outline, by the way, you can go to Tune, Assign Outline, and it's right there. It's the same one. That should match. We'll re-render again. We'll probably want to do it for the floor and the wall too, if we want to get a nice outline here. If that's something you want. The infinity wall is nice, or the cyclorama, because it gets rid of this line, but this is a stylistic decision. If you'd like to have this line here, because again we're going for hand-drawn look, then select the object, of course. I go to my outliner. Where are you, outliner? Sometimes it's like it gets a little broken, but you can go to Window Outliner and select the two planes. And then with the plane selected, go to Tune, Assign Outline, boom. And now let's see if we see that now showing up, hopefully. We might not because it's actually, oh, wrong camera. Let's make sure we're rendering the render cam. We might not see it because it's at the intersection. Yeah, it's at the intersection. So this is one of those instances in which this is an intersection of two pieces of geometry. So you're maybe not going to see it here, and that's okay. I don't really like this line. I'm going to be completely honest with you. So I'm going to hide the floor because I personally just want a white background, because I want a white background so I can composite this against some old paper or something. Okay, cool. It looks more like gray than white, but you kind of get the idea. Let's see. We can always, if it is something that's like, well, that's definitely gray, it's not white, I want white. I did want a white background. Don't flip out about it. Just find the object, which I think I've scaled up to be pretty large, you know. So find the plane. That's the plane outline, which we don't need. We just need the plane. And then make sure that we have what? We have either a fill shader that's just solid white, and that's all we've got to do. Let's go back to the render. Let's see if we got rid of the gray here. Maybe we got rid of the gray, did we? I hope. Yes. So now we have a white background. I feel like I deleted the outline by accident. Oh no. Undo. Get my outlines back. All right. So be aware that if you delete the outline node, like this is the outline node, they're all going to go away. So don't do that, obviously. Just hide or delete the plane you don't want. This plane, of course, I want to have that solid white on. Okay, let's try it one more time. Let's see, do we get the outlines back? Yay! Okay, awesome. This is ready for compositing. So I'll save this out. What do we call him? He's Richard, right? So this is Richard. Let's say Richard is some graffiti. We'll say. I don't care one way or the other. I just want to clear that up. Yeah, your stylized render, again, as I keep saying, is just something that is meant to be fun. Really, I know you guys are tired of me saying that, but it really is. It's meant to be fun. And once you create a cool stylized thing for your character, or for next week's assignment, we'll say, then it's totally fine to use the same how about this? It's totally fine to use the same stylized materials that you've developed, and you can reapply that to your midterm. You can reapply that to your final, and of course for the character that you're working on for next class, you know. I'm not saying you have to have 3 different stylized renders. I mean, it would be nice. I would love for you to do that. That would be fantastic. But if you're like, no, this is a nightmare. I've already spent all this time on this. I've already made a cool stylized thing. Then just reuse the shaders. Reuse the same materials. And if you're unclear about that, in Maya, you can go to your hypershade, and you can simply, in your hypershade, whatever it is, like this shader, so you can select the shader that you've worked on. You can go to File, Export Selected Network. That's going to export that toon shader. And then, of course, you can apply the toon shader to either your midterm or your final. It's pretty easy, really. Okay, so then now, let's find something that's relatively large. And if you wanted to go Creative Commons licenses, that way, you know, no copyright issues or whatever. But we could take something that, I don't know, this white brick wall, if it's not too small, it's probably okay. We'll open this up. I kind of like this. I think this is cool. I say copy. I'll go to photop.com, but I don't care if it's Photop or if it's Photoshop or I don't care if it's GIMP. I don't care what you use. You decide. Whatever compositing package you prefer, whatever you're comfortable with. Somebody said Clip Studio Plus. I don't care what you use. Procreate. You decide. I really don't care. Okay, so now we have this guy, but we want Richard. So we'll open up Richard. There he is. I just rendered him. And we'll take Richard here. Oh no, I tore off the tab and I don't know where it went. This is the only problem with the oh, there he is. All right. Copy it, Control A for select all, Control C for copy, and Control V for paste. Now, from here, multiply, and now he kind of looks like he's on the wall, like he's been drawn on the wall, but not exactly, but a little bit. So this is again where the wear and tear comes in. So how do I make the wear and tear kind of appear on the rendering? How do I do that? Well, again, use multiply. So what I do is I take the original brick wall here. I can duplicate it using Control J. Control Shift U will desaturate. Then I'll copy this by hitting Control A for select all, Control C for copy. And I'll go make another layer mask. Boom. And in the layer mask, Alt click, paste. Right? And there it is. And if it's not there we go. If it's not showing up very much, this is where we can crunch our levels together. And it's okay with this layer mask to really make these levels really intense. So just like really crush those levels. Then if I click back, you're going to see with the layer mask, hopefully, there we go, that the layer mask is now showing this sort of wear and tear on the drawing. One trick I like at this point to use is to invert the layer mask, and there we go. Now it really looks like that maybe was drawn on there. And you can of course change the opacity of the layer also if you prefer to do that and really make it look a little bit even more worn away. That's up to you. And that's pretty much it, really, for the compositing and for the toon shading and all that stuff. So, and I'll leave it up to you as to how else you want to manipulate this to make it look like it's a traditional piece of artwork. So, what else, guys? We're at 5:30. So if there are no questions about the demo or what's due, I can continue to look at your work, and that's fine too. So this is something I did for Inktober, very similar technique, trying to make it look 3D thing look like a traditional piece of artwork. All right. So if there are no other questions, you guys on Twitch chat, if there are no other questions or no other things you want me to demo, then I'll turn off Twitch and I'll get back to your work really quick. Does anybody here's another example. Right. So one more, same idea. We have and this, by the way, this comparison here that's in print size, I would like to see this as part of your midterm and final, but this is something I can throw out as long as I have a print size render of your of the three things, right? Of your ambient occlusion and your stylized render and your copy. So here's the reference, here's the copy of the reference, 3D render, stylized render. So this is what I'm really requiring again, just to really drive the point home. Print size render, stylized, with your name on it, PDF format, ambient occlusion, please, same thing, and then your final render that matches your reference. These are the three things that are due. And I know I said midterm and final. Yes, but really just do the last week. Just make sure to have these in your drop folder in your Google Drive the last week. They still need to be on your blog, but they can be on your blog, as JPEGs in 720 or HD format. That's fine too. So I know I sound like a broken record, but it's on the syllabus. I've shown you many examples. That's it, I guess. Okay, looks like there's no questions. All right, awesome. Well, then, cool. If there are no questions, I'm going to stop the Twitch feed and rejoin you on Discord. So there we go.